Hello again, and welcome to another session, open house, right? Let's see as many questions as we can answer in 1 hour. And we're going to do our possible best to answer it in the best possible way, right? The best possible way might not be the only way, but then one thing about business agility or about Scrum or about Agile is the fact that there's so many ways to get to the route. And which is one of the reasons why Agile, it's more about leadership. It's a compass. It's not just one way, right? And that is why you can get into one company, they're doing one thing, another company, the same thing, but two different approaches. So let's go ahead and get started for today with our questions and answer. And I see Joseph, your hand is up. So let's start with a voice question, then we'll move to the chat question. Go ahead and ask your question.
All right, hello everyone. My question, I got into a little bit of confusion between maybe you work for a consulting company and the consulting company is a company that actually employ you, and then you work for an end client. So, and then I'm looking at when you work for a particular company, say like Walmart, and then you work on a contract basis, and do you still like when they ask you, are you working on like a full-time or under a contract position? So who do you say now is the main kind of, how can I put it, the person that it was kind of a confusing question for me because I'm looking at it. So
Who is your end client?
yeah, who is the end client then? And I'm working for directly for Walmart, and then at the end of the day, now who is the end client? Who is the main
If you're
person?
employed directly by Walmart and you work for Walmart, Walmart is your end client. The reason they always ask end client is because most of the Scrum job, you are going to be contracted by a consultant, which is a consulting firm. And then they will now employ you or they'll subcontract you to Walmart. So that's how most Scrum worker are allocated. So most of these consulting firm will call you and set you up for interview. They will be the one running your paycheck. Although you might be working for Bank of America is not the one issuing your paycheck. So the end client. So that's the concept of end client. You are employed by the consulting firm, but then your end client is who you are working for.
All right, just to maybe give a follow-up to that, because in the subsequent question, the person was like, okay, you work for Walmart for this long time, and you said each year your contract was to renew. Why is it that your contract is renew right now that you say you ending your contract? So, and I said my project is ended. He wanted to still find out to know the reason why my contract wasn't renewed.
All right, most contracts are hired. If you work on a contract basis, based on the duration of a project. Remember, Agile is about delivering a product. So if they completed the product, why would they need you? That's why most are on contract basis. If we have a contract to build, let's say, a payment system for Amazon, and we promise them that we are going to deliver that in 12 months. After 12 months, why would they need you? The reason they are not giving you a permanent role is because you're working on a contract. So once that contract is ended, your job is ended.
Right.
All right. I see a question here. Can someone read out the questions? Who wants to volunteer to read the questions so that I can? All right, Alan, can you go ahead, please?
So the first question says, you have been just hired as a new Scrum Master. The team you are going to work with doesn't have any experience in Agile, and it is very skeptical, and they are very skeptical about Scrum. They want to focus only on coding and don't want to track their progress or attend any meetings. How do you influence and motivate them to use Scrum?
All right. They want to focus on coding. In a summary, they think Scrum is a waste. It's not going to help us. The too many meetings. We don't really want it. Now, the first thing is that you don't try to convince people to do things. If you convince someone to do something, after they finish doing that activity, you're going to convince them to do the next one, right? So what you do, you show them the value. The first thing about handling resistance is meet them where they are, understand why they feel that it's a waste. Why do they understand you want to get this product out as fast as possible? I understand that this event might be a waste, but then I want to kind of just get from your understanding, what if Scrum was a better way to make you feel better? Would you consider it? What if it's completely different from what you think? Now, would you mind trying coming to this event just once? And if it doesn't create the result that is intended, then we can go ahead and talk about it. That's why they say your coaching style is persuasive. So you don't go and start telling them, oh, no, Scrum is the best approach. You cannot do Scrum without events. No, you need to buy them in. You need to sell them the value. And you need to tell them, hey, look, we're not changing anything. It's not about meeting. We're just trying to look at how we can increase the business value. If the business value is increased and the customer is happy with your work, would that make some sense? All right, this is how Scrum help you to achieve that. I know we completely might not get it within the first setting, but that's something we can try. Right, so you get them to experience it. And in that case, when you're giving them the buy-in, what's going to happen? You need to be at your best to be a good facilitator and to have them really enjoy the process. And that's why, as a Scrum Master, you really, really need to be a good leader to be able to pull along with your team. All right, the next question.
Give an example of a time you made an escalation.
Okay, first concept is, what is escalation? Escalation simply means that what you're dealing with is above your power. You cannot handle it. So let's say, for instance, one of your team member just cannot access any of them. Let's say they're working from home and they need to connect to the company VPN in order to access their work. And for some reason, they cannot access that VPN, and they send you a regular text, right? They send you a regular text, or they were able to connect to Teams, but they could not connect to their work environment. They send you a regular text. And they were working on an increment that was due by the end of the sprint. So what do? Why you're helping them to resolve the problem by contacting the IT unit, you immediately escalate that to your manager to let them know this is happening and this might slow the result. All right. Another time which you can escalate an issue is the point where you've tried to coach a team member and help them see the importance of participating in meetings, and they definitely are not buying in, and your action is pulling back the team. Now you escalate it to the next level after you've reported the step that you have taken. Next question, please.
The product owner chooses new features regularly and never picks bug fixes. In the end, the crashes have to be fixed, and the tech debt is growing. Those problems are slowing down testing and development. What will you do in short and in the midterm?
All right, so the first thing you want to do is, when you plan as a team, you always need to reserve time to handle bugs, and technical debt. That is why we always leave a buffer. So the first thing I'm going to do is I will use my retrospective to explain to the team why handling bugs or technical debt is a very important aspect for the team. Then I will go ahead to ensure that we schedule time by collaborating with the team where we can start working on them gradually. And the third action I will take is I will try to work with a team to establish a working agreement on how technical debt should be handled subsequently.
Okay. Next question. Please explain swim lane.
All right. Now, swim lane, it's a concept used in SAFe, where we have the program bots. The reason I think I said the last time, if you're not SAFe certified, you're doing yourself a big disfavor. All right. So in SAFe, because multiple teams are working together, at the end of the PI planning, we have a program board that shows how the work is connected or they are dependent. So a swim lane is where the work there is not connected to any work, which means that the work in that lane can be completed at any time without relying on any other external party. So that's a swim lane.
Powerful. Okay. Next one is referring to one of your successfully implemented Agile transformation case studies. Discuss why you think it was successful and what lessons learned would you implement in your next project?
Thank you very much for that question. Working as a Scrum Master, I have not completely led an Agile transformation, but I've been in a team where they are just starting and they did not really understand Agile. So understanding my knowledge on Agile, which is helping a team deliver an increment and where the customer is the focus. The first thing I did when I met my team was that I tried to help them to become performant. By helping them to become performant, there are two major things which are very important for me. Number one, communication and collaboration, because Agile is about teamwork. And the two most important thing in a team is communication and collaboration, because if we're not doing this, we're just individuals in a team. And now, when I foster communication and collaboration, we are able to address challenges as needed. And when this is feasible, or when I achieve this goal, the next thing I always focus is to ensure that I continuously interact with my team to understand what is their level of in-depth of knowledge, and also paying attention to my KPIs, which at the team levels will be the bend down chart and the velocity chart, and leverage information from there to continuously, step after step, grow my team to a mature team. I would not say there is one way to really fix this, but for me, the key that I've seen work is to master the art of communication and helping your team collaborate. And if they do this in less than no time, they can be super performant without you even being there.
Next question. How will you work with a team member that is dragging the team behind, not always completing his stories?
That's a great question. One thing with a team, and also one of the reasons a team needs a coach, is because you always have certain cases, but the reason I'm part of the team is to look at how I can help to address this issue. So if I have any of my team member dragging the team behind, the first step I always take is to build a personal relationship with them so that they have that open space to talk to me. People do go through challenges, and sometimes we might be focusing on the fact that they are not completing work, and we ignore the fact that they might just need a little bit of encouragement to deal with an issue in order to fix it. So I always create a medium for personal communication, and if I identify a problem, I will be able to partner them. Some of the steps I can take, I can partner them with another developer to help them, or I just stay in constant communication with them and encourage them. And because I am telling them that, hey, look, I'm counting on you and you always have me, sometimes they feel like, oh, I don't want to let you down. And I've actually had cases like that where in a retro, when I'm having my team kind of say, you know what, it's appreciation day. And I had one of my developers that said, you know what, Francis, every time you just check on me and send those messages, I remember, oh, I need to get to work. And thank you for helping me completing my workload this spring. So this has been one of the latest secrets that has worked for me.
Wonderful. Next question. Product owner doesn't have any experience in agile methodologies. He used to manage waterfall projects. He doesn't want to participate actively in Scrum events like sprint planning, sprint review, and be available for dev team during sprints. What will you do to make sure that the Scrum process is being applied?
Okay, just if I answer this question. Now, one thing that what I'm doing for this session is to answer as if I'm in an interview seat. And I want to use I'm using different approaches to answer it. So I want you to pay attention on how I approach the question and also how I connect my words. Just to point out, it's not in every question that I'm going to say thank you for that question because it's going to become a monotonous event. I'm going to try to jump in from different angles. So that's also what I want you to master when I'm responding to these questions. All right. So I would say that is expected because someone coming in from a waterfall environment, they have more of a management skill. And as a manager, you're trained to manage, you're trained to be in charge. Now, the point is that they don't want to come. I believe they don't have a problem coming to this meeting, but they just need some time to transition into a new environment, which is why I am there as a Scrum Master to help facilitate the transition. So the first thing I do when I get in a team, it's always to meet with my collaborators. The product owner always my best friend. And one of the things I always do is I create a 15-minute chat at least every week. Sometimes we put 30 minutes just to talk about things, just to, even if we're not planning work, let's just meet. What is going on? They can support me in giving me more clarity about the project, helping me understand some of the requirements, which I probably don't understand. And I also just an open space to learn more about them. And in one of the cases, I had a product manager who was a product owner, and they had a super busy schedule, which I definitely understood, and they could not come to the meeting. But just because I was so close to them, I was like, you know what, your team needs you. And when it's like, I'm busy, I say, your team needs you. They're actually missing you. Just stop by and say hello. And then when he came to 1 or 2 meetings, he realized, oh, they really needed me to clarify some stuff. And he could see his value in that meeting. And he had to shift his schedule. And we even had to move one of our meeting a bit 30 minutes ahead just to let him in. So sometimes it's just about meeting them where they are, finding a common ground, and that's going to work. It might not be 100%, but then I believe there is no magic that communication and collaboration cannot work it out.
Thank you. Tell a time you lead your team to drive a project to deliver value. And what were some of the challenges you faced? And how did you handle those challenges? I think this is a continuation. How will you encourage communication? Oh, no, that one first. Please.
Okay. Now, I'm going to make a reference to one of the projects which came in the middle of us implementing another project. And we're working on this project, which was to enable our team set up a payment application system for an end client, TD Bank. And then we also had another project came in from the Chase Bank, which we had to help them implement since our goal was to focus on implementing program. And you can imagine how disruption coming in the middle of the project where energy was already focused on that. Now, my team kind of resisted that. They did not want to take on that project because they were already bought on the goal of the project. And but after we had a session, and I had to give them the reason why it was very important, because this was one of the top clients for my company, and they wanted to do everything to deliver the project. So we decided to create fun about the project. So, okay, why don't we give it a name and just make sure that we can all stay motivated? And someone said, oh, let's call it a macaroni project. Like, what was that? It's just about, okay, if we think about this food, think about going to the restaurant and having a very nice plate of meal when you're already full, right? You don't want it, something you don't want to resist. You already have that meal, it's full, but you don't want to resist it. What are you going to do? Definitely, most of the cases, because of your psychology, you're going to create some space to take that in. And that really helped the team to stay motivated. They were able to hop on the project, and in less than no time, they were done. Now, the challenge was the fact that we needed energy to shift the attention. They were already working on somewhere. Nobody likes change. But given the fact that I always stay in very close communication with my team, not because of daily stand-up, right? So even when the concept was brought on board, I had to do a quick round just for fun. I say, hey, we got some work. I know this is going to be disruptive, but tomorrow during our meeting, we're going to figure that out. So when they came to the daily stand-up, they were, oh, okay, what's up, what's up? So they already have an idea, their mind was prepared. And just because of that closeness, we're able to destabilize the environment. And although there was some resistance, they actually buy in for the project.
Dr. Francis, are we allowed to ask follow-up questions?
Yes.
Please, if I were to ask a follow-up question on what you just answered, does it mean that you abandoned your initial project that you were working on?
Okay, that's reprioritization. A project, your company can ask you to put a hold on a project and switch to another one because of priority. So you don't abandon it. You put a hold to it. So you reprioritize your backlog, and all the item for this new project comes on the backlog. Alternatively, you can create a different backlog for the new project so that you don't mix things up. Yeah. But what I gave was the real life scenario. So what we did was just all the stories that came in from JP Morgan, we just tagged them JP Morgan, and then we brought them to the top of our backlog. And within about 5-6 spring, we're able to conclude them, and then we move back to our original project.
Thank you. So can we leave it open for the floor if they have a follow-up question to raise their hand when you, or,
yeah,
or they should write it down and bring it up at the end.
If you have a follow-up question, ask another question. If we allow people to unmute, we're not going to meet our time box, right? But then we'll leave about 15 minutes as usual for any other follow-up questions or anything that wasn't clear. You can ask a follow-up question the last 15 minutes.
Thank you, sir. So how will you encourage communication among your team with example in bracket scenarios?
Okay, it's very important. I believe communication is one of the biggest strengths of a Scrum team. And one of the things I've done to encourage communication is, number one, I always encourage my team to meet at least once a month for happy hour, just to share and without really coming for a meeting. Can we pick a date for happy hours just to get, and in one of those meetings I had, it was fun. My manager was part of the meeting, and they were an older person. They actually brought a record player, and they were demonstrating with those music. It was purely fun, and that really ignited the way my team communicated after that. Because when it comes to a meeting, someone has something to talk about. Someone has something. Games have also been really perfected. I remember I did a game once with my team, and that game is the month of bet game. So I often tell everybody, okay, everybody switch off your camera, and I want everyone to agree that we are going to participate in this very small exercise. If you agree, let me see your hand up or let me see your comment. So once everyone sends in their agreement, then we're going to say, okay, look, we're going to go from January to December. If I say January and you're born in January, you just simply need to turn on your camera, give us a smile, and then you can turn it up. And now, the first time I did this activity with one of my new team, I realized almost 3 of my team members were born in the same month, August. And that just created a bond within them. I was like, oh, wow, I did not know. And then that conversation actually like, oh, what are some of your favorite things to do? And that was in July. So we started talking about what fun that they're having for their birthday. And this just got to connect the team more better. So I always believe in sometimes let's get a bit of disruption, let's get a bit of fun, let's get a bit of game. Another powerful thing that have worked for me, I'm always the first in my meeting, at least 5 minutes before, and I turn on my camera. The first person that comes in, how was your day? Hey, what's going on? Any fun with work? And we start talking about also some of the major happenings around. And this just helped me to get to know my team better. When other people come in, they join, and we always give an allowance of about 2 minutes before our meetings. And that has been like a really good bonding time. When I started that, I realized many people started joining earlier because they know, oh, I'm going to be there. And sometimes I always have fun stories to tell them.
Thank you. A user story is lacking the final designs, but the design department promises to deliver on day 2 of the upcoming sprint. The product owner of your Scrum team is fine with that and pushed to have the user story in the sprint backlog. What is your take?
All right. Now, one of the beauty of Agile Scrum is flexibility. We definitely not working on straight cut line. If they promise to deliver the next week, and we actually see that what we have, we can start working on that part of the story and it can be tested independently. Yes, we can pick that up and work on that increment while waiting on the next design. But if what we have doesn't meet the definition of ready, which means that we can be able to test it and make sure it's completed independently, then we cannot prioritize to work on that story. So that's how I'm going to handle that. And sometimes it's just to take some time and explain to the team if we cannot really test the story, what's our definition of ready? And if that's missing, definitely it means we don't have a working agreement, because sometimes I don't want them to feel like I'm the one taking the decision. So I always ensure that we have a working agreement that we can always refer to when it gets to situations like this. So in that way, it's a shared buy-in for everybody.
Thank you. Next question. What is one thing you implemented to create added value to your team that was outside of Scrum Guide, known Agile principles?
I'll talk about the happy hour. It's not part of Agile, but I always introduce happy hours to keep my team going. And apart from that, I always, at the start of the week and at the close of the week, come up with a motivation quote that help my team to keep their week focused. Sometimes I introduce it in the middle of the week, and the weekend I always put in place weekend fun tips that they can actually help them get some fun with your family. And I remember one day I did that, and one of my team members shared how they were visiting a resort in their city, and most of the team members were in that city. It's like, oh, we don't know about this resort, and it wasn't really that expensive, and they were really grateful that he was able to share about the resort, and many of them kind of did it. So I believe being a Scrum Master is not about staying to focus on the Scrum Guide. It's about creating a community where people can really feel belong. All right, let's take a question from Davises, and then we can go back on the chat.
Okay.
Go ahead and ask the question.
Thank you. Doc, I have a follow-up question on something I implemented that wasn't part of the Scrum guide. So you can please tell me if this is the right way to go. So
Okay.
let's say I say when I join my teams, there are a couple teams I've had in the past where I do anonymous surveys where I ask them to rate, let's say, how they feel about the stakeholders on the scale of 1 to 5. I do this within my team, anonymous surveys. Is that something I can say I added?
Yeah, that is very important. And why would you do anonymous survey when it's supposed to be open communication?
Because it's a stakeholder issue, it's a management issue, and people are wary about just keeping their jobs. They may be more comfortable answering certain type of questions anonymously.
Okay, and are your stakeholders always part of your meetings?
These meetings, the stakeholders are not part of.
Right. Okay. Yeah, so that is good, but then the follow-up questions I ask are questions that can come. Why will you need to do an anonymous survey when stakeholders are not part of the meeting? And understand that you need to use a retrospective as an open space for your team member to be able to speak out without feeling intimidated, right? So, so long as that can be an example, but which means that anyway, it's just to get some people opinion, because even when we can decide to be as open as possible, some people don't really feel open enough. So you can say that you always do that as a check to see if your team members are open enough. Are there issues that come up in anonymous survey that should have come up during normal meetings? And then
Got it.
help you now to know exactly your area of focusing. But that would not be for the stakeholder. That would be just for you to get to know your team more better and know the area to improve in.
Got it. Thank you.
Next question. As a Scrum Master, can you tell your team to do overtime? Give reasons to support your answer.
I say, no, I cannot tell my team to do overtime. Number one, I don't have management power. I don't have control over budget. So if I ask them to do overtime, who's going to pay for it? So if my manager make a request for my team to do overtime, I can work with my team to get that buy-in, to get the support, try to work with them to give them a rationale why this might help, where we have a very important stuff. Now, if we are working on a deadline project and the team need to do overtime, I don't have that power to tell them to do overtime. I escalate this to my manager. I give them the importance of the project and why the team might need overtime and extra time. And I can ask the buy-in if they are allowed to do so. But then I have personally witnessed a situation where my team members in a retrospective share with me that, oh, look, this project was very close to a head, and about 8 p.m. last night, I was talking with my other team member just to make sure that we get it done by today. And that was from a place of passion. They did not consider that like overtime. So most of these things happen even without the knowledge of management. It's just about how passionate when team members start working and they believe their family.
Thank you. The product owner of your team normally turns stakeholder requirements document into tickets and asks to estimate them. Are you okay with that procedure?
All right. So is the product owner estimating them, right? If I get the question right.
I don't think so. I think he's asking the team to do the estimate.
Okay, he turn it into ticket, then ask the team to do the estimation.
Yes.
Okay. Now that's a tricky question. Estimation are done during backlog refinement or during sprint planning. Now, yes, it is right for the team to give estimate, but then we need to be able to give estimate using the right approach, where every team member is allowed to participate and give their opinion on what they think is the effort needed. if we allow this job specifically just for anyone working on it to put a number, it might definitely lead to a bias scenario. It might definitely lead to situation where we can put things sometimes just because we want to rush. So I always ensure that my team estimate as a team and the product owner present in the meeting to clarify any requirement that is needed during the conversation.
Thank you. Next question. How do you build relationships with the business customer or business leads?
Business customer and business lead. In other environment I've worked, I've not have like really direct close communication with the business lead, but I always have the opportunity to interact with them during our spring review. And the way I build communication is by helping them know that they are in the right space and they can always reach out to me in case of any question or in case of any communication. So, but then if I also consider my manager, one of my manager was part of the business lead in my organization, but that's more of a manager to manager stuff. But in a spot where I have that opportunity to communicate with business lead, now the most important thing for me, I know working with business lead, it's about communicating the business value, what they want to understand. It's how we are meeting their need, how the team is working to push on their need, giving them constant update and making sure that I give them room to ask any question. Do they have any concern? That open-ended communication help me to communicate rightly with them.
Thank you, sir. Next question. How do you handle resistors?
All right, so resistance is like a 6 and a 9, and it depends what angle you're standing from. So I can be standing on one side and you're standing on the other side, you're seeing a 6 and I'm seeing a 9. Both of us are right? But then if we want to keep to our opinion based on what we are saying, we realize a powerful resistance is going to be there. So the way I handle resistance is not to disagree with resistance, but to accept what the other party is going through, meet them where they are, and then try to work with them. And then from there, I can easily help them. Now, let's kind of look at a very funny scenario, right? One of the things I always like to talk about a team, it's about you dealing with kids and they want something or they don't want to let something go. What happens if you don't understand with them? What happens if you don't meet them where they are and try to explain to them why they need to let it go, right? They still continuously do it because they feel like they don't understand the reason. So resistance is helping someone. It's just about a different way of looking at things. Meet them where they are, tell them it's okay, give them certainty, and take them on a walk. And when you take them on a walk, you get to discover them, they get to discover you, you build that relationship, and you can all go to dinner at once.
Thank you, sir. Next question. What does diversity mean to you? And how can you encourage and promote inclusive culture?
Diversity is about seeing every other team member like yourself. We don't want to say because I'm the product owner, because I'm the tech lead, because I'm coming from this, because I don't speak the same language like you, and we treat everyone differently. So we encourage that by playing a neutral ground. We don't call a position, we call everyone by name, and that helps us to be inclusive. I try to encourage my team to see everyone as one, create a rule for respect. And also, this is always a strong point on our working agreement. And when a team member actually breaks this, the team take it very seriously to address it.
Thank you. Next question. Tell me a time you faced an unexpected pressure among your team. How did you handle it?
Oh, thank you. Unfortunately, I've not been in a space of unexpected pressure. Maybe it can just be me because I always anticipate that things can come up. So when they come up, I try to stay calm. Yeah, but then remember I gave a case earlier on where we had to switch on a project that we're working on for a very short period of time. So to someone, they might consider that as a pressure because management need that switch, right? It's unexpected. But when it's unexpected, what happened? You stay calm and reassure everyone things are going to be okay. Now, I had another scenario, and we're supposed to have a spring planning meeting, and that spring planning meeting was very important because management needed the team to commit to some certain features that were due within the next 2 sprints. And in 5 minutes to the spring planning, the PO called off the meeting. It's like, okay, can you tell the team we're not going to have the meeting today? I know that's unusual, right? Because the PO cannot call the meeting, but then the PO was also the manager. So they also had the management power to call off the meeting. And you can imagine everyone was expected. I needed to launch the meeting. And what happened is I needed to craft a very quick message sent to everyone individually, not as a group. Hello, the meeting is canceled for some emergency reason. I'm going to communicate subsequent note later. And now in that case, all of them were reaching back to me to give more clarification. And then I had an opportunity to help them stay calm and to explain what is happening so that they can get more clarity. Hadn't been that I just put that in the group channel, no meeting, the manager canceled the meeting. Now, people go back with a lot of different perception without understanding. So I needed to protect the image of my product owner, my manager. This package was unexpected. I needed to make sure that the team still build that confidence and help them know that, oh, this was a very serious emergency, and they were happy to reschedule later part in the day and to come back.
Thank you. Next question. Can you tell me of a time you failed as a Scrum Master? Why did you fail? What lesson did you learn from it?
All right, thank you for that question. I believe nobody's a superhuman being, but one of the things I definitely don't really add as part of my word is failure. Because I believe failure is when you decide not to take any action. Everything that happened in my team, I asked them to treat that as a learning procedure, to learn from that and to document that immediately. So I would definitely not say there's a time I failed as a Scrum Master. I can say that there's some time maybe I did not really meet up to the expectation of the team, which I can even hardly remember that. This is some of the stuff I don't keep account. But if I could remember, yeah, there was a stakeholder meeting I needed to attend and represent my team. And I was traveling during that period because I was working from home. And I actually changed time zone, but my computer did not update on the time zone. So I was anticipating the meeting to be 1 hour ahead. Meanwhile, it actually was 1 hour behind since my computer did not update that meeting. And I actually missed up that meeting. What I learned from that is whenever I travel, if I get to a different time zone, the first thing I check if my calendar has updated and it's in. And also what I also do is that when I'm traveling, I also take a notebook where I write some of the major meetings that are happening so that if the calendar doesn't pick up automatically, then I know that I have a backup. So it was kind of really frustrating. My team was expecting feedback because there was some restructuring going on in the company, but I could not give them feedback in the next meeting because I missed out that, right? That was like, oh my God, what am I going to tell my team? But I actually explained to them what happened. They were able to understand, and I follow up with the other Scrum Master in the company to get them that data in a short while.
Thank you. Next question. What does, in parentheses, people over processes look like in your working environment?
All right, people over processes. I would say that paying attention to the need of the people and not just paying attention only to the way work is done, but paying attention to their own emotional need, paying attention to their own technical need. In that way, we could help them to focus on the work. Now, if I want to prioritize processes over people, I'm not going to leave our room for negotiation. If it's this way, it got to be done this way. There's definitely no room for us to negotiate. But then because I know that we're interacting with people and we need to keep them motivated to do the work, and we understand that we are humans and things might change so fast, while we still paying attention on the processes and making sure we're keeping the checks, not to go out of what's the word I'm looking for, not to go out of scale or not to go out of scope. We make sure that we prioritize our team members and make sure that they have what they need, they're happy working in that team.
Thank you. So Dr. Francis, is it okay to say to an interviewer that you're lost of words, you're looking for your words?
Perfect. Okay. You're talking to people, so make it very flexible. Go with your cup of tea. Feel very relaxed. Right now, when you become too tense, you lose that leadership aspect. So it's okay to like, okay, I'm looking for one particular word. Just feel free as much as possible. It gives you a relaxed environment. And yeah, trust me, you don't need to be that tense. You don't need to be, no, you need to be yourself.
Thank you. Next question. What change did you bring to your team?
All right, so one of the words people fear a lot is change. So thank you for asking that. So I am always kind of skeptical to use the word change because nobody wants change. So I would rather say I always try to add value to my team. I don't change things because they need to be that way. I look at what is the value that has been created. Now, some of the value that I've created in my team, number one is to create an environment where collaboration can take place. In my last team, one of the things I encouraged my team member to do was to create KT sessions, knowledge transfer session. I noticed there were really good developers with so many years of skills. And we also had some junior developers, just about 2 years leaving college. And most often, they often struggle with the way they do work, not because they don't want to do it. When you follow during the daily stand-up, they did everything possible, right? But sometimes the senior developers might be frustrated that they're not getting this done because it's taking them more time than usual. So when I noticed that, I suggested to my team during our retro on a KT session once every 2 weeks. And everyone could come in and share a technique that they are using in their space that's helping them. And this really, really helped my team improve a lot. And I realized that the younger developers now start spending less time to work on the story. And they were more excited when they get to report, when they get to communicate during the daily stand-up. I'm like, oh, thank you. What you learned yesterday has really helped me a lot. I've been wasting a lot of time trying to do this, but now I can do it at ease. And I was super happy hearing all of this valuable feedback from the team.
Thank you. Another important one. Can you explain the SDLC and the STLC?
Okay, SDLC. Can you put that in full, please?
Software Development Lifecycle.
Okay. So the software you can ask the interviewer to put it in full. So don't just so feel free. That's why can you put that in full, please? Right. So you can ask them to put that in full. It's just about how do we start a project or pick a requirement and make sure that we deliver it when it's ready. So the software development life cycle, we start building the software. When we build the software, we need to make sure that we test it. And when we test it, we need to make sure that we deploy it and then we release it to the client. Then it's ready for use. That's the life cycle, right? What's the other one again?
STLC.
Software testing life cycle. guessing that's the word. Is that the
Volunteer, you
word?
can clarify in the chat box, please.
What's ST? I've come across that word, but it's not a commonly used word. If I was answering that question, I would say
Yes.
I'm not too familiar with the SDLC. Can you?
I think a couple of people have confirmed is software testing lifecycle.
Okay, software testing life cycle. All right. Definitely don't have a really in-depth on a testing life cycle, but my knowledge on testing, it's on the different phases which my team perform the testing. When a story, a developer is working on a story and they complete building the code, they send it to the testing team to do code testing. And also when it validate code testing, now it's ready for acceptance and it moves to done. When we deploy it to the user environment or to our production environment, we also do user acceptance testing there. And then also before it release, I know they also do the final user testing. So that's my knowledge about testing, but I've not really paid close attention to understand what is the step-by-step and what are some of the technology that is they're being used. But that's something which I think I'm going to note it down and I'll try to get some details about that.
Thank you. Next question. What is the most or least important agile principle and value in your opinion? And which principle resonate most with you and why?
Okay, so there are 12 agile principles. I would say that I would not consider any to be the least and any to be the most. But what I would say is about the aspect on customer centric, where the concept of agile open us up to focus on what the customer needs. To me, I believe that's the center of business because we are serving the client. Unlike the traditional way of project development, the customer is also pay attention, but the customer is not really engaged in the process. I believe the principle that focus on the customer help us to build solutions that people love.
Thank you. As a Scrum Master, how do you prepare your team members to respond to changes, requirements, and prioritize without being stuck?
What we do is we always make sure that we plan at least 2 spring deeper. When we plan 2 spring deeper, it helps us to stay open, more expectation, and also helping my team understand the concept of agile and that it's always changing and we should be open enough to accept this changing is very important. So I focus on communication. And also focus on helping my team know that they need to collaborate. So in that way, they are well prepared to handle any changes that may come in future.
Thank you. Using examples, give a time you communicated tough situation to a senior level management and protected the team.
All right, thank you very much for that question. I've not really had a scenario like that in my environment where I needed to really escalate it to a point where I need to protect my team. But then in my community of practice, I've heard a team member share how one of their team members actually did not follow the right process in testing before the increment was released to the client. And this actually brought a lot of chaos. And when they came down to the team level to find out what was happening, she was able to own up to say he's going to take charge and estimate and evaluate that. But what she did was to return to management with mitigation with a mitigation strategy the team has built for that not to happen in future. And because management was pleased with the strategy that they took, they just let it go at that point. But hadn't been that should expose that team member probably may have lost their job.
Thank you. Next question. What is your communication style as a Scrum Master, especially with business partners?
I try to use open communication where I don't assume that I know what they need. I always try to ask valuable questions to find out what might be the requirement and to find out if I'm missing out something. So in most of the cases, if I need to send an email to a business partner, why I state what they require, I always end with, please let me know if I'm missing something or there's something I omitted. And that gives them an impression that I'm open to learning more. So open communication has been my powerful tool for communication.
Thank you. Another interesting one. How do you deal with strong personalities in a Scrum team?
Strong personality, it's about people perspective. If you look at the Togman model of team formation, you realize that the reason people don't collaborate is because they don't communicate. And the reason they don't communicate is because of assumption. So sometimes I might meet you and I probably have not taken the time to learn about what you value. So I try to learn more what people value, and I use that as a point to always assess them. I have some of my team members who like basketball a lot. So when I know that it's a season for basketball, I try to ask them what their favorite team is. And that will always be like an entrance point for me to communicate with them. And when we start talking about what they love, it's easy for me to just say, okay, before we close up, I have one question, I have one favor, right? And because I pay attention to what they love, they also feel like I'm more concerned about them. So it's about caring about people, helping them understand that you understand their value. In that way, you can find a common point to collaborate.
Thank you, sir. Next question.
How many questions do we have left?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16.
Okay, no more questions. Let's go through the rest question. Don't ask any question again for today. let me finish this one, and then we can create another open house. Please go ahead and ask the other one. I'm going to be very brief with the rest, the 16 questions that are remaining. Go ahead.
Okay. Discuss how discuss how a team's performance could be impacted by new members joining or existing members leaving. What steps will you take to minimize impact?
All right, thank you. When a new member is joining a team, obviously, the team need to take time to welcome them, to know them, and this might cause some disruption, right? Especially if this person might be coming from a completely different background with different ideology. It might take a team a bit more time to adapt. The same thing when a team member is leaving, it is destabilizing the team. The team need to take time to readjust in the way that they're working. So it's very important to understand how this affect team balance. And what I do is I always come in with my communication and motivation and talking to the team to find out what challenges they might be facing and what help they need. And looking at how we can rebalance communication in any of these scenarios. And because of that, most often as a team, we've been able to find a balance.
Thank you. Can you tell, can you tell an organization policy that was blocking your team, and what did you do to resolve it, I guess?
Come again?
Can you tell an organization policy that was blocking your team, and what did you do to resolve it? I think he wanted to resolve it.
Oh, okay. Unfortunately, I haven't come through such a situation. But then organization make policy for the for the for um for the value of the team or to help the team.
Okay. Dr.
So in
Francis,
case, yeah,
let me not try to rephrase this question. Let me read it the way he wrote it. Maybe you'll get some sense from it.
yeah.
Can you tell an organization policy that was blogging your team, and what did you do to resolve it?
Yeah, I think it's the same way.
Okay.
Yeah. So I haven't come across that. I haven't seen any organization policy that I've been working in a team where I actually found an organization policy blocking my team. But if this was to happen, I will have a conversation with management and express my concern to them. And I think we'll be able to find a common solution.
Thank you. A team is always picking reasonable action items, but is later not delivering on them. How do you handle this habit?
Yeah, I think this is a very serious concern because there's something missing. If we estimate rightly and the team don't deliver them on time, then we need to work on them. Now, one of the approach I've used to address some of this issue when I have team member who don't deliver on time is to create more bonding with them and ask them questions like, oh, I see we've been carrying about this story. Do you need some help? Do you need me to reassign it to somebody else? What is stopping us from creating this? And with that, I've always find a way to help them push it out. So, and in most of those cases, I always have my own personal log where I write down some of these items that are not frequently completed. And I do a personal follow-up, get to read more about what is required. And with that, I've been able to support my team to close the gap.
Thank you. Another interesting one. Your stakeholder doesn't show up in a spring review. What do you do?
All right. If they don't show up in the spring review, the first thing I'm going to do is we're going to record the review and then share the feedback with the stakeholder and I'll follow up with the stakeholder to see if they have any question.
Okay. Shall the Scrum team become involved in the product discovery process? And if so, how?
If they are part of the organization why this is going on, it's a very big value. And they can help in the product roadmap. They can help in breaking our futures into stories. It's very important. But in most of the cases, the team or in the different environment I've worked with, we actually met Mark Short. The product was already discovered and the team was already working to. Most of my team, although I've met them at the early phase, but then they were really not engaged in the project discovery phases. But I believe if I was to be a Scrum Master in that company and they were in the project discovery phase, I would really encourage them to be part of it and or encourage also management to bring them in.
Okay. You are new to a team and notice there is no well unifying team goal and vision. Describe how you would go about creating the goal and what ceremonies will you use to bring greater team cohesion.
We try to set up a team working agreement, and within the team working agreement, we'll try to get together and look at what is our team goal and vision, and then we can take it from there.
Thank you. Tell me of a time your team was running behind schedule. What did you do to resolve it?
Okay, remember when I was working with Swiss America, when I first joined the team, they had a whole growing backlog. I realized story was being carried over and over. When I observed during my first 3 sprints, the first thing I did is in one of the retrospective, I put that as a major point for the team to talk about. And I raised a concern about it and asked them what they think can be done. in order to complete them on time. And when when they were raising their concern, they feel like most of the story need more time and more research to get them done. And when I noticed that they needed more time, I collaborated with them to encourage them to do more mid-after session where they could brainstorm as a team on some certain aspect and share ideas. And when they started doing that, it actually helped them to close the gap. And we also improve on our estimation and making sure that we're not just calling out story point, but everyone was participating every time we had a sprint planning and every time we have a backlog refinement. One of the things that also helped us was that we adopted a rule to make sure all our story points were below 3, and that actually helped increase the flow. Thank you.
Thank you too. Next question. Your team approaches major release deadline, and as a result of mid-iteration assessment, you realize that due to internal team reasons, release deadlines has to be shifted significantly, and this impact marketing and other operational activities by the client, which depends on product release date. What will be your explanation to the client and your next step in this situation?
All right, that's a very grievous situation for business. And I think the first thing to do as a coach, as a Scrum Master, is to set up a strategy to make sure that this doesn't happen. And also to make sure that we don't only alert our client only when it's getting close to the release. So as a strategy, not to let that happen, one of the things I always work with my team to do is to make sure that every future in the product backlog is tagged to a release, and we can effectively track them. And looking at the timeline, we also have evaluations to see how close we are. If for any reason we notice that we are not going to meet on time, we immediately escalate it to management. And also, one of the main things which I think has been a big lesson for me working as a Scrum Master is the fact that if something happened, there is a root cause. So often we look at what is the root cause of this problem, even before I have to meet with the stakeholder, and try to look at how we are addressing this. So I don't just go to the stakeholders and say, oh, you know what, Mrs. Stakeholders, we are running late. There's nothing we can do. I go with them with a tangible explanation of why this is happening and a mitigation aspect of how we are going to address that. And I'll do everything possible to make sure that we can close the gap in case that happens. But I've not actually run into such a situation lately.
Thank you. Next question. What is the ART, A-R-T, and the science behind Agile?
All right, ART, Agile Release Train. So an Agile Release Train, it's a team of people that are working to deliver a value or the value of the product to the client. Agile Release Train implement a value stream. And if I want to go a bit more theoretical into it, it's recommended by SAFe to be a team of teams between 5 and 12 teams, including business owners, stakeholders, system team, product management, and architect that work in collaboration to deliver an end-to-end value to the client.
Thank you. How does capacity planning help in sprint planning?
It's very important to plan capacity because it tells us who is there, who is not there, and what amount of work they can take. If we don't plan our capacity well, we stand a chance of committing to more work or committing to less work, and that doesn't help us as a team. So capacity planning is a very key component to enhance team performance.
Okay. What is the relationship between features and MVP?
MVPs are implemented by futures. So when we're looking at MVP, which is minimum viable product, is an accepted value that can be tested in the market for us to know if the client need it or not. And for us to implement that MVP, we select key features that the client really want to see and make sure they're part of that MVP.
Okay. In case you receive a story on the last day of the sprint to test, and you find there are defects, what will you do? Will you mark the story to done?
No, we cannot mark a story to done because done is done. Done doesn't contain defect. And I believe that is also one of the things we try as much as possible to break down our stories into smaller story points so that we don't push testing to the last day. So in one of the team I work with, we had a policy that all stories that require testing must enter the testing column at least 3 days to the end of the sprint. If not, they will be rolled over. This was just to avoid us pulling back or pulling to the end of the sprint. When we actually put up this rule, we realized that most developers became very conscious, because if they don't try to meet up on time, then their work will be carried over to the next sprint, which become a burden to them. And since they really wanted to maintain standard, it really encouraged them to make sure that they're giving the tester enough time to complete their story.
Thank you. Very interesting question here. What language did your developers use in writing code? Where did they upload their code? What type of testing did they do?
All right, I'm definitely not really a tech person, but I do understand that they use Python, Java, and I know that testing happens when a developer complete the code building and then send it to an environment where the tester can test it. So that is my knowledge about the code and testing. Maybe there's something I can learn from you if you can add more or something that I'm missing.
What about language in writing code? What language do they use in writing code?
The language was Python and Java. They use Python, they use Java. These are the language they use in writing code. And also, I think my front-end developer also used HTML. Those are some of the language that I saw them using.
Thank you. Your PO wants to add stories in the middle of the sprint as a Scrum Master. What can you do?
Okay. One of the things which I always work with my team to achieve is we had a communication channel, and part of our working agreement was to always inform a team in case of a change in scope. And also, even for those working at the back end, if they're changing any major code that will affect the front end, we make sure we communicate it in the channel at least 1 hour before so that people can be aware. And most often, we ask them to put also a reason why this is changing. Now, in the case where a product owner wants to ask scope, the first thing we do, if this is communicated in the channel, I'll quickly liaise up with the developer and follow up why this is happening. And when we have a shared communication and we all assess that this is important, then we can be able to communicate with our team members to see if it's possible for them to handle this. Right. So I don't wait for the next meeting. I try to make sure that we handle this as fast as possible. If this is not a priority and it can wait, then we communicate it to the team as well.
That was the end of our session.
Okay, great. So are you giving me the offer? What's the next step of the interview?
You'll be communicated, sir. Thank you.
And if I may ask, if I want to find out more information about the kind of teams that are in your environment. Based on the question, I think they might be very technical, and maybe I think mature team. Are they the elevators? Are they mature team?
Thank you very much, Dr. Francis. I'm not the hiring manager. However, like I said, we're going to communicate with you to see if you're moving forward. And if you're moving forward, all of that will be explained to you.
All right, thank you. One last question. I know you probably might not have this, but I just want to see if you can help me. What is an average turnaround for your interviews? Like, you see this happen within 2 weeks, you see this happen within 1 month. Is there a time frame? I could look forward to the next step.
Yeah, I believe in the next 5 days, the HR is going to communicate with you.
All right, thank you very much. That will be all my questions.
Thank you, too.
Okay. Ooh, I think I need any other questions? No other questions, please. Any other contribution? I want a contribution now. No more questions for today. Valentine's Day, I'm hired. Okay, nice one. All right, perfect.